I'll outline the key lessons from Robert Kiyosaki's book Rich Dad's Guide to Investing in this video. This is Robert Kiyosaki's third book, and it's the third book in the Rich Dad series. I'm hoping you'll like it as much as you did the previous ones. When he was 12 years old, Robert strolled alongside the man he refers to as his rich dad along a beach. Suddenly, Rich Dad said, "You see that big house?" and pointed to a plot of land by the water. "I just purchased it." Robert was at a loss as to how his so-called rich dad could afford that ostensibly pricey piece of property at that point. Because Rich Dad wasn't, rich at the time. The response Robert received when he inquired about it was, "Well, I couldn't afford it, but my company could." Robert's rich dad is the source of the lessons in this book, and under his direction, Robert was also able to amass significant wealth. Look at the key points and try to replicate the formula using them as well. 1. First key takeaway. Produce assets that can be used to acquire other assets. Robert was aware that his real dad would never be able to afford the beach house mentioned in the introduction, despite the fact that he had a great job and earned significantly more money than Robert's rich dad. According to Rich Dad, Robert's real father had spent his entire life working long hours to earn money that had helped someone else become wealthy, whereas Rich Dad had spent years working to build his own wealth in his own business. The lesson that Rich Dad teaches is that in order to build significant wealth, you must first create your own asset. Paying you by the hour won't likely make you wealthy. In the words of Warren Buffett, if you don't find a way to make money while you're sleeping, you will work until you die. The second kicker that will help you increase the size of your asset column can be achieved once you have successfully created an asset that generates a positive cash flow. This is the acquisition of new assets. Always try to invest in assets that can improve your cash flow so that the additional surpluses can be used to buy more assets in the future. This keeps happening, and when done correctly, you will notice a compounding effect. One of the main benefits of investing using the cash flow from your assets in a business rather than your paycheck is that the cash flow can be used as gross income since the parent company hasn't yet distributed it to anyone. Rich Dad used this gross income to purchase assets through his company while Robert's real father paid taxes on the gross income before attempting to purchase assets with the remaining net income. The aspect of safety is another. There are risks involved with asset ownership and operation. Whether you manage the assets as an individual or through a corporation, the risks are essentially the same. If the assets are owned and managed by a corporation rather than you personally, you are much better protected personally should any risk materialize. 2. Second key takeaway. Use debt as a tool. Regarding debt, there are many opposing views. Debt is seen as bad, risky, and something that should be avoided at all costs in one camp. On the other end of the spectrum, there is a group that believes that taking on debt can hasten the process of accumulating significant wealth. Robert Kiyosaki asserts that there is bad debt, as the first camp claims. However, as the latter camp emphasizes, there is also good debt. The distinction is in the purpose of the debt and how it affects your cash flow. Begin by talking about bad debt. People in the middle class become eligible to take on more debt as they advance up the corporate ladder and start to earn more money. A more expensive house, a new car, a nice boat, etc., are frequently purchased with this debt. This debt is bad debt because it reduces their ability to pay their bills and only increases their reliance on their next salary. As time goes on, using this bad kind of debt to finance new, ostentatious purchases will become a death trap for anyone hoping to accumulate wealth because of its addictive nature. Therefore, as their income rises, so does their bad personal debt, and the vicious cycle is perpetuated. But good debt has the opposite effect. It strengthens cash flow. The wealthy use this type of debt. They are qualified to take on more debt because their assets generate a healthy cash flow for them. Instead of adding to the company's liabilities, the new debt is used to increase its current cash flow. This is accomplished either by increasing the returns on current assets or by acquiring new assets. Although this process also reinforces itself, it produces a virtuous spiral rather than a negative one. Third lesson learned. Maximize spending while minimizing income. Increase spending while reducing income. Robert started working for his wealthy father when he was 9 years old, doing things like mowing the lawn. Robert was paid 10 cents an hour for this work. Robert once requested a raise from his wealthy father. Rich Dad completely eliminated the salary rather than increasing it or even talking about it. Rich Dad stated, Paying people to do work is training them to think like employees, as the reason for not wanting Robert to become dependent on an hourly wage. What do workers believe, you ask? That in order to improve your financial situation, you should maximize your income through your salary and then live simply by cutting back on expenses. However, Robert's rich dad makes the exact opposite case, contending that you should aim to maximize your expenses rather than your income. Before you stop watching this video in shock, let me explain. The first section, which focuses on minimizing income, emphasizes the need to avoid becoming reliant on a salary, as Rich Dad tried to teach 9-year-old Robert. You ought to have your company reinvest the entire excess cash and actually cut back on the amount of personal income withheld. It also seems counterintuitive to maximize expenses in the second step. However, that's because you might picture the incorrect kind of expenses. The proper kind of expenses are those that can help you succeed in business and should be maximized. Attending a seminar, purchasing a book, picking up a new skill, hiring more helpers, buying new assets. All of these costs will eventually help you escape the rat race. According to Rich Dad, most people eventually lose their money and become bankrupt because they continue to think like poor people, who desire high incomes and low expenses. You'll be stuck trying to live as cheaply and sparingly as you can to make up for your fear of losing money if you never make that mental switch. You will start to see the other side of that coin once you comprehend why a wealthy person would want high expenses and low income. 4. The fourth lesson is to acquire the 3 E's. According to Rich Dad, you needed to have 3 things in order to succeed as an investor and businessman: education, experience, and extra money. If you want to be able to recognize and take advantage of the opportunities that are constantly available and in motion, you'll need all 3 of these E's. Let's begin with the first topic, which is education. Even though it's very simple, this one is crucial. You must have a solid grasp of business. This includes their methods of operation, the dynamics of various industries, and, possibly most significantly, a thorough knowledge of how to use the X-ray. Reading financial statements, in other words. Without education, everything you do will be pure guesswork, and the outcomes will follow. Experience. Getting business experience is the following step. Before his son and Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad used to place a blank financial statement on the table and ask them to fill in the asset column with something. He did this because Rich Dad thought starting your own business was the best way to gain business experience. What mattered to him was that his apprentices had started something. They were encouraged to create, fail, learn from it, adjust, and create something else, fail again, learn from that, adjust, and create something else until they succeeded. Rich Dad claims that excess cash doesn't require the same level of attention as the first 2 E's. This is due to the fact that extra money will inevitably come once you have a good education and the necessary experience. Here, you maintain complete control over your assets, use cash flow to buy more assets, and wisely use leverage to hasten the process of wealth creation. When people graduate from college, they typically look for jobs rather than opportunities. From there, the downward spiral begins, turning the money into trash. Never pass up a fantastic opportunity just because it doesn't involve moving up the corporate ladder. Arm yourself with the 3 E's. 5. Begin today. Takeaway number 5. Begin right away. Robert Kiyosaki's first business was forced upon him by Rich Dad as a side gig. And now Robert himself is recommending this. Keep working at your regular job if you need to make some money to buy food for yourself and possibly a family. However, invest all extra cash, time, and energy into your company. Don't wait. Create, experiment, fail, learn, and repeat. Over time, the likelihood that your next attempt will succeed increases as you make more attempts, fail, and learn from your mistakes. And as Rich Dad says, you don't have to be right 51% of the time as a business owner. You only need to be correct once. But make sure you're prepared to survive the worst-case scenario. You must have another chance. Most millionaires fail their first 3 businesses, claims Rich Dad, before they succeed. Most people have never lost a single one. Because of this, 10% of people own 90% of the wealth. Before you proceed to start your side hustle, let's recap. Create an asset that purchases other assets to build your money machine. Once you've developed a formula that works, consider debt to be a friend and use it to increase your cash flow. Maximize expenses that will enable you to succeed while minimizing income withdrawals. You need education, experience, and extra cash to be able to take advantage of financial opportunities. You can only be right once, so begin now. For now, bye. Consider like and subscribing for more valuable info like this. See you in the next.